Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome you in another episode from a series of Matriz official webinars. And today we welcome Dr. Simon Litvin, and the topic of his presentation is trees and creativity, creative imagination, and development of creative imagination, creativity as a skill. Dr. Simon Litvin is one of the top world trees experts. He is known for development of several trees techniques, such as function analysis, a very popular technique today, and so forth. Currently, he heads the company called Gen Trees in the United States. So he is willing to share with you his findings and discoveries in a world of creative imagination development, which takes a really important part in trees. The talk will last 40 minutes, and then we will have 20 minutes for a discussion in form of questions and answers. So if you would like to ask Dr. Litvin a question, please use a chat feature in Zoom. You know how to find it. It's on the bottom of the screen. And write your question in the field. You can do it at any moment of his presentation. It is not necessary to wait until the presentation is over. Afterwards, I will read the questions and Dr. Simon Litvin will answer them. So I wish you a pleasure of listening to the presentation. Dr. Simon, please, the screen is yours.
Valery, thank you very much for our introduction. And I will share the screen.
Yes, please.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me go to the presentation mode. Okay, let's start. Hi, everybody. Good morning to people who are in the Western Hemisphere. Good evening to people in China, Japan, Malaysia, and some Eastern countries. As Valery said, the topic of my webinar is creative imagination development. Here is the content agenda of this webinar. First, we will talk about what is why we need this creative imagination. Do we really need it or not? Then a few general notes about what is imagination in general, what is creative imagination, and so on and so forth. Then very important topic is psychological inertia. Because one of the objectives of creative imagination development is to fight with psychological inertia. We all have this psychological inertia. Then we will talk about some methods and tools for development of creative imagination, and few words about how to apply creative imagination development in the innovation process. And then, as Valery said, we will have 20 minutes for questions and answers. Okay, let's start with the need for creative imagination. First of all, this creative imagination development is a part of theory of inventive problem solving. It was developed, these TRIS, Russian acronym for theory of inventive problem solving. It was developed by Soviet scientist, engineer, and science fiction writer Henrik Altschuler. He wrote science fiction under the nickname Henrik Altov. And Mr. Altschuler, jointly with his followers like Pavel Amnuel and myself and some other people, these experts, developed this creative imagination development to support the process of innovation. Here is a direct citation verbatim from Henrik Altschuler that creativity for an inventor is like a courage for a soldier. You may have knowledge in analytical skills and knowledge in trees, but if you have zero imagination, you will be not a good innovator. It's interesting that innovation in general benefits from both analytical thinking and theory of inventive problem solving trees and some other analytical methods like design thinking, Six Sigma, and other methods. They are important for effective innovation. But there is kind of inspiration or creative imagination. And analytical thinking is based on the conscious thinking, and the inspiration or imagination, it's kind of subconscious inside. You cannot effectively control your subconscious productivity. But that's what creative imagination development is in trees is trying to do. And they are complementary to each other. If you are using trees, let's say you are using principles of resolving contradictions, the principle saying divide the object into several pieces, but then you should kind of think of what pieces, how many pieces, how to divide them, and there are no specific recommendation in each particular case on a case-by-case basis. You should kind of invent what how to specifically apply this or that analytical tool, and that's the role of creative imagination, to fill the blanks in these tools. As I said, both technical trees and creative imagination development were developed by Altschuler and his followers. And in order to develop both trees and creative imagination development, it was used the same approach. Altschuler analyzed a huge database. In the case of trees, he analyzed the thousands of patents in the world patent collection and figure out some basic trends of engineering system development. In the case of creative imagination, Altschuler analyzed thousands of science fiction writings, books, and novels and publications, and created a register of science fiction ideas. It's like an encyclopedia of science fiction's ideas. And using this basis, he started to develop tools for creative imagination development. What's important that unlike trees mostly is used for solving engineering or technical problems. Nowadays, it's applied to business problems, but the tools of creative imagination development are applicable to all areas of human activities that require some creativity. It's applied by managers, scientists, teachers, medical doctors, journalists, and so on and so forth. For instance, I trained a couple of dozens of science fiction writers how to create new ideas to write science fiction. Nothing in common with technical trees, as you understand. That's why it's this part of trees is very important to any people who are in some creative occupation. Uh, the question is, what are the conditions for successful innovation, or not only technical innovation, innovation in any area? The first, typically psychologists are saying that in order to be a successful innovator, you should have intrinsic talent that you got from your parents, the genes, intellectual capabilities. Then, yes, it's very important. If you are born with zero talent, it will be very difficult to become an effective innovator. Then you are inventing in some specific area of expertise, mechanical engineering, or biology, or computer science, and so on and so forth. If you are not expert in this area, you will not be an effective innovator. Then, is it enough to have a specific subject matter expertise? No. The broader is your technical erudition, the better innovator you will be. Then, analytical thinking. If you don't have this analytical thinking, it's very questionable that you will be able to develop something novel. Then, very important thing, motivation. You have all this, you are a talented person, very experienced in your area, have a broad erudition, great analytical thinking, but you don't have motivation. No innovation will be out of your activity. The next one, the analytical innovation methodology, like trees, like design thinking, the design for manufacturing and assembly, DFMA, Six Sigma, and so on and so forth. All these analytical tools help you to apply your conscious, to focus your conscious abilities, your talent, give you some tools and steps to achieve your innovation goal. And finally, creative imagination. It's a part of the multiple conditions for successful innovation, but very important intrinsic part. Some psychologists started to analyze creative imagination a couple of centuries ago, and here you see the famous curve that was developed by French psychologist Théodule Ribot in the beginning of 20th century. Ribot analyzed how your level of imagination depends on the age. And he figured out that, you see, it's a very pronounced peak on this curve. At what age you have the highest creative imagination? It's 10 to 12 years old. The very young kids, toddlers, they don't have good creative imagination. They are copying what the adults are doing. And I believe the majority of the participants of this webinar, we all are here, 30s, 40s, 50s, which means that our intrinsic level of creative imagination is pretty low. Does it mean that we cannot innovate? Fortunately, no. That's exactly what creative imagination and trees are doing. They are using special tools to get to the results that are intrinsically available only for people with very high creative imagination. It's artificially growing your creative imagination to the necessary level to innovate. How to achieve the innovation results that are expected from people with high level of creativity, but you don't have this high level because you are pretty old and not anymore have very high level of creative imagination. Very simple recommendation: use tools. Like if you are running, who will win in running? A person who has the better muscles. And if you are, let's say 60 years old, you definitely will not win the Olympic Games because your muscles are not so good at this age. But if you're using some tools like bicycle or car or the train or a jet, of course you will be much faster than the runner. The power of your muscles doesn't matter in this case. You are multiply the power of your muscles with these tools. That's the approach that is used by trees in creative imagination development and innovation. Okay, some introductory words about creative imagination. First of all, the definition. What is imagination? Here is a definition. It's the ability to form some mental images within your own mind without perception of the object or situation. You don't see it, you don't hear it, you don't touch it, and you still can imagine some object or event. What are the types of imagination? There are three types of imagination. The first one, so-called reproductive or memory-based imagination, the ability to imagine an object or event that you've seen or you hear about at some point. For instance, if somebody will ask you, could you please imagine a typical breakfast, English breakfast? You know that English people are eating eggs, sausages, some ham, beans. It's easy because you see it, you read about it, you have all the necessary information. You don't see it right now, but the vast majority of people has this reproductive type of imagination. The second, more higher level of imagination, it's called reconstructive or combinatory imagination. You don't censor the object right now. You don't never see it before. You never as an entire object never see or heard about this object, but you have some information about at least the pieces of the object or event. For instance, what is a typical breakfast of the fairy? You never saw a fairy. It's from fairy tales. Nobody see these creatures. But you read some fairy tales. You know that fairies, they are flying from one flower to another flower, and they are eating the petals of flowers and some nectar from flowers. You never perceive it. You never see it. It's a fairy tale, but you have all necessary information to imagine. It's a reconstructive combinatory imagination. and the highest level of imagination called creative or productive imagination. Its ability to imagine object or event that you have never seen, never perceived in your life, in a whole or in parts. You have no knowledge about the parts of this object or event. You just need to imagine it from scratch. And that is a creative imagination. Here is an example. What is the typical breakfast of some alien from Milky Way? You don't know how this alien looks like, what he or she is eating. You have zero knowledge about it. You just need to use your imagination. That's the creative imagination. Okay, now it's time to introduce a very important category in creative imagination development, the psychological inertia. Again, definition. Psychological inertia is an acquired pattern of behavior that occurs automatically in response to typical situations. Let's say uh, uh, the situation is absolutely typical. You need to walk along the street. You don't need to think how to walk or how to cut a piece of bread. You are doing it automatically. How are you? Typical answer. Oh, I'm fine. Thank you. I'm fine. Oh, it's hot outside. Take your sweater off. Or it's cold outside. Take your sweater on. It's a typical reaction on a typical situation. Music is too quiet. Let's turn up the volume. Music is too loud. Let's turn off the volume. The psychologists, they revealed that in our day-to-day life, even if you are in creative occupation, the 99% of your activities is not creative. It's a trivial, routine action. And for these actions, creativity, you don't need creativity. Psychological inertia is your friend, is your assistant. You don't need to think how to perform trivial operation. Even if you are an artist or if you are a musician, the majority of your actions are still trivial. But sometimes, in occasions when a person needs to develop some non-trivial solution, develop something new, psychological inertia becomes a very powerful limiting factor. You cannot develop something new and creative because of psychological inertia. The goal of creative imagination and development, one of the goals, is to control the psychological inertia. By the way, it's very important. We don't need to kill psychological inertia because, as I said, in the majority of typical situations, you need the psychological inertia. It's your assistant, not your enemy. But in the rare cases when you need to develop something new, you need to switch off the psychological inertia. That's the very important notion here. Okay, let's talk in more details about types of psychological inertia. There are a couple of dozens of different types of psychological inertia. Of course, in this short webinar, I cannot show you all these types, and I will show just maybe 2 or 3 types of psychological inertia, very typical. First one, inertia of functional predisposition. Definition. This is the perception of an object as a carrier of a particular function. Let's say the book is for reading, the chair is for sitting, the pen or pencil is for writing. It's the product, any object around us performs some function. And we have this perception of the typical function. The shaver is for shaving, but can we use this object for some other functionality? That's the idea of overcoming the functional predisposition inertia. Example of functional predisposition. There was a psychological experiment on animal intellectual ability. Several monkeys were placed in the room, and there is a banana that was sitting on the ceiling of the room, and the task for a monkey is to get to the banana. On the floor of the room, there are multiple boxes and sticks, and the monkey, considered more or less intellectual, if he or she got the idea to use these boxes, put one box on the other box, take sticks, and then get to the banana. But what happened unpredictably, and it's a typical example of functional predisposition. In order to get to the banana, psychologists believe that monkey needs these boxes and sticks. But one monkey that was considered a genius, she looked at the guy, the psychologist that set up the experiment, and when he went to the room and putting these boxes and sticks on the floor, the monkey jumped onto the shoulders of this scientist and took the banana. You see, the monkey used not boxes and sticks, but the body of the experimentator, the psychologist. It's a very non-trivial behavior. This monkey overcome this functional predisposition. The scientist is not just a guy who is putting on the floor these boxes and sticks. It also could be a way to reach the banana. Okay, an exercise for you. Let's imagine that there is a wall, let's say a wooden wall, and you need to attach a candle to the wall. It's a pretty thick candle, and you have a hammer, a box of small nails, and that's it. No matches, nothing that you can use. How to place the candle onto the wall? If you try to just use these small boxes, they are much smaller than the thickness of the candle. That's the typical psychological inertia. I will not torture you because we have limited time for this webinar, but the answer is very simple. Let me emphasize by my voice what you are missing. It's a hammer. It's not just small nails. It's a box with small nails. The answer is, let's attach this box to the wall by these nails, and then place the candle into the box. That's why people are not solving these quizzes very effectively, because of psychological inertia. And how to fight this psychological inertia? Trees and creative imagination development have special tools like function analysis, when you basing on some features of the object, you analyzed what are the functions of this object, and you can easily change the function of the same object. There is a special method in creative imagination development, methods of Robinson Crusoe. The idea of this method is how to find some very non-trivial functions of the object by analyzing the features of this object. The practical example of this functional predisposition. It's a real practical example, one of the inventions that we developed for one of our clients. What was the problem? First of all, the object is a pen. If you see me, like the normal pen looks like this one. And what is the problem with a pen? By the way, people are using pens even in the era of digital devices. And there is some problem, and medical doctors know this problem, that people who are writing a lot with a pen, they suffer the so-called writer's cramp. They also scientifically called mogigraphia. And it's a disorder caused by cramps or spasms in the muscles on your forearm, on your palm and fingers. Very typical for people who are writing a lot. And the problem is how to develop a new type of pen that should be free of this disadvantage. And we apply function analysis. First of all, we analyze the functions of the pen. But what is the functional predisposition here? In order to write with a pen, we should first to grip it. You cannot write without gripping. Function analysis, a fragment. The fingers of your forehand grips or squeeze the pen, which create a permanent muscle tensions. And this is a problem for these cramps. And secondly, fingers controls or pushing pen. It's the main function of the pen. It doesn't create any problems with cramps. But without gripping, you cannot perform the function of pushing the pen. What we develop and trying to get rid of this functional predisposition. Everybody knows that in order to write with a pen, you have to grip it. Let's formulate a trimming problem. How to write without gripping. How to teach another components of our hands, for instance, a palm, a wrist, or other parts to perform the gripping function instead of the finger. And we developed such a solution. Here is a new generation pen, if you can see it in my hands. I'm not gripping it at all. You see, I'm not gripping it. I'm just, the pen is sitting on my forearm, and I'm just pushing it down and can write without gripping it. It's a specially wide-shaped cradle design, and very popular product on the market right now. You see that in many cases, as I said, functional predisposition doesn't allow you not only solve the problem, but even formulate the right problem, like this trimming problem. Because you know that without gripping, you cannot write. Okay. The next one, inertia of terminology predisposition. It's a perception of an object name as a carrier of particular property or function. Let's say example, the icebreaker. The name of icebreaker means that the object, this ship, should break the ice. But do you need the broken ice from this icebreaker? No way. Moreover, ice breaking even doesn't break the ice. It pushes the ice down under the layer of other ice. The function of the ice breaking, it's not to break ice, but to remove ice, creating a passage for other ships. That's the example of terminological predisposition. The exercise that psychologists like to use, quiz. John married Mary, and because of that, he became a millionaire. How is it possible? And people usually are saying, or Mary wants to buy very expensive jewelry, or travel over the globe, and that's why the person losing money. But how he could become a millionaire? Because he married Mary. How it come? How it's possible? And the answer is because before he was married, he was a billionaire, and because of marrying Mary, he became a millionaire. You see, it's the term millionaire means you immediately imagine that a person was not wealthy but became a millionaire. But you can became a millionaire from the other side. You were a billionaire and become a millionaire. It's a typical terminological predisposition. And in trees and creative imagination development, there are special recommendations how to overcome this terminological predisposition. Starting from specific terms, then substitute them with general scientific or technical terms, then to functional terms, then childish terms, like how to explain synchrophasotron to a 5-year-old kid, and some universal term like thing or object. That's allowed to get rid of a terminological predisposition. Recommendation: don't use specific terms. The best is functional terms. Here is a practical example. A company developed a new type of soap, crystallized soap. And in order to, the liquid soap was poured in the molds and then crystallized in the mold. In order to do it effectively, the developers of this product, they put air blowers. They blow the air to the molds and then cool the mold and cool the soap in the mold, and that's the way of solidification of this liquid soap. What is the problem? How that this process of solidification of the liquid soap took too long. It took like 10 to 12 minutes, and you know that you need millions of bars of the soap. Here is typical inertia of terminology. Do you need to blow air? No, you need to cool. Oh, do you really need to cool the soap bars? Oh, no, you need to solidify these bars. And what does it mean from physical standpoint to solidify? Aha, the real effective term is you need to crystallize this liquid soap. And that's what we develop for our client. We develop a new technology. Instead of cooling by blowing the air, we apply ultrasound. It immediately creates millions of centers of crystallization in the volume of the liquid soap, and the solidification is processed in seconds, not minutes, but just a couple of seconds, and the soap is crystallized. Again, typical psychological inertia of terminological predisposition. Okay, I will skip maybe. Okay, I will show this one. Uh, Inertia of predisposition to parameters and characteristics. Typical question when psychologists are trying to identify or this type of psychological inertia. There is a triangle here, A, B, C. And the question is, how many triangles you totally see on this picture? Typical answer is 3. This is number 1, A, B, C. The second is A, B, D. And the third is B, C, D. But is there any other triangle? You are missing the small triangle here in the letter A. It's a triangle here. You just didn't take care about the size of the triangle. You are looking only to the big triangle. Okay, there are special tools in trees and creative imagination development to avoid all types of these psychological inertia. In this particular case, in creative imagination development is used the method of numbered axes. I will skip the examples because the time is ticking. There are multiple methods of creative imagination development. I already mentioned the method of numbered axes. The idea of the method is in order to change, to get rid of psychological inertia of the specific parameter, the method push you to change the value of these parameters from the current parameter to the extremes, to much higher and much lower parameters, or even zero value of the parameter. Quantitative changes in many cases lead to considerable qualitative changes. This method was developed firstly by Heinrich Altschuler, and it was a part of the ARIS algorithm for inventive problem solving. It was called size time cost by that time. Then further, it was developed to the method of numbered axes when all parameters could be changed. There is an algorithm for this method. Select an object, then select the parameter of the object, and the parameter can be quantitative or qualitative. Evaluate typical value of the selected parameter, then systematically change the value of the selected parameter from zero, from current parameter to zero, to the very high numbers to very low numbers. And what's the most important step, determine how the selected object and its supersystem will change at different points on this axis. Okay, I will skip the exercise because we are out of time. There is a practical example, and that will be the last part of my presentation. Then we will go to questions and answers. A practical example why it's very important to use this tool. There is a standard process of making chocolate candies with liquor inside. And this process is very ineffective because the cold liquor is viscous, and the filling process, because it just the process is you are putting the liquor into the solid chocolate frame. The hot liquid could be more fluid, but if it's hot, it's easier to fill the chocolate, but it will melt the chocolate. Problem: how to increase the efficiency of candy making process? Psychological inertia. It's a predisposition for parameters and characteristics. The liquor should be warm to be fluid enough. That's a psychological inertia. Who said that the liquor should be hot? We apply methods of numerous number axes. The current temperature of the liquor is 20 degrees, or when you heating it, it's 30 or 40 degrees. But we recommend to lower this temperature to below 0 degrees Celsius. What was proposed? Instead of that, that's the current process. The chocolate bottle filling with liquid liquor. What we propose to froze the liquor and then put the melted chocolate on the bottle. Very fast, the problem was solved by getting rid of the psychological inertia. Okay, creative imagination development. This is a typical mistakes in the past, like Bill Gates says, the internet is just a hype. He didn't believe in internet. Or Steve Jobs said, the subscription model of buying music is bankrupt. People, even great minds, the developers, one of the developers of iPhone, there's no chance that the iPhone is going to get significant market share. Even great minds, everybody has psychological inertia. What should we do? What we are doing right now, we compromise. We think about objects. We use system-based approach, and we address known features. What trees and creative imagination development are doing. Instead of compromising, resolve contradiction. Instead of thinking about objects, use functional approach. Analyze functions and change the functional model. Instead of using system-based approach, use multi-screen approach, super system, subsystems, past, future, and so on and so forth. And instead of addressing the known features, address latent main parameters of value, unknown features, features that should be discovered. Where in the innovation process we are using creative imagination tools? In MPV, main parameters of value identification, key problems identification, problem solving, and solution evaluation and substantiation. That's it. We have time for questions and answers. Valerie, please read. I see there are some questions in the chat.
Okay, Simon, thank you very much for your presentation. And the first question is from Jürgen Holzbauer. Do we switch off psychological inertia, or do we switch on creative associative thinking?
Thank you, Jürgen, for your great question. Actually, these are kind of synonyms. When you are switching off psychological inertia, you are switching on your creative thinking, because psychological inertia is a barrier that don't allow your creativity to effectively work. It's your very serious barriers. My examples with psychological inertia shows you that you without overcoming psychological inertia, even the very creative people like these guys, were they creative? Of course, they are leaders in creativity, in business, in technology development, great minds, but they had psychological inertia. When they finally overcame psychological inertia, they created a new generation products like iPhone, like internet, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Next question, please.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your questions. From Ding Huang Huan, is there some effective training skills to overcome the psychological inertia?
Of course, let me go to this slide. We have multiple methods and tools of creative imagination developed. There are several groups of these tools. The creative imagination development based on analogies. For instance, one of the famous tools that developed by Heinrich Altschuler was small smart people tool, or synaptics. It's another tool of using analogies. Systematic approaches like system operator or layer design. These methods of numbered access, it's one of the systematic approaches. Morphological analysis and so on and so forth. Methods of broad associations. Jürgen mentioned association as an important tool to overcome the psychological inertia. He is absolutely correct. We're using association as a tool, but not just like, let's associate. It doesn't work. There should be some methods, and there are methods of focal objects, methods of mutual exchange, and so on and so forth. There are different methods. Functional approach. There are special methods in creative imagination development that allow you to overcome a psychological inertia. Yes, the course of creative imagination development, the minimal course is 8 hours just to introductory course to creative imagination development. And what the maximum course was 128 hours for journalists and science fiction writers.
Okay, thank you very much. A question from Iqbal Said. Is trees spreading or not?
Interesting question. Of course, trees is really disseminating. I wouldn't use the term spreading in the world. Today, I don't have the exact numbers, but millions and millions of people are trained in trees. The leaders in the world is China. Millions of people are trained in trees. The next in number of trees educated people is South Korea. The next is Russia, then Germany, then United States, and some other countries as well. Today, there are almost no countries in the world where there is no at least one or a dozen of experts in trees. The same is about companies. Hundreds of companies in the world are using trees effectively, and some of them put trees as a core of their innovation. Companies like Samsung or General Electric or Procter and Gamble, they have three divisions, or Motorola, they have three divisions, or Siemens in their companies.
A question from Alan Lee. There is a quotation. The most important enemy to prevent us to innovate is ourself, psychological inertia in brackets. Is that right?
I would say there are multiple innovation killers. Psychological inertia is one of them, but let me go to this slide. This one. Yes, if you are not well educated, you don't have effective subject matter expertise, yes, you are an enemy of innovation, because you cannot effectively innovate if you didn't get the right knowledge and skill. If you are not reading the literature, not only scientific or engineering publication, but the fiction literature, you don't have broad education, broad erudition, and again, you are limiting yourself in innovation. If you are not training in methodological, in analytical tools, again, you are limiting yourself, and so on and so on. And like, if you are lazy, don't have motivation, of course you are an enemy of your own abilities to innovate.
Okay, next question from Capcom. Do you offer CID online training course?
There are two questions. First, are the training course in creative imagination development available? The answer is yes. How often? It depends on the country. It's extremely popular in Russia, especially
Simon, there is a question about online training
on.
course.
Yeah, and there are online courses, or there are existing online courses.
Do you offer?
Do we offer it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would say we can offer it, we have it, but unfortunately in the United States and Western countries, it's not on demand. People are looking for trees or some design thinking, some analytical tools. They don't understand the role of creativity and psychological inertia. There is no demand, actually. We are ready to do it, but
Okay. Next question is from Valeria Dubnyuk. Thank you very much. Are there any books with example for self-train to overcome all this psychological inertia?
there are two types of books on psychological inertia. There are books of psychologists that analyze psychological inertia, but unfortunately, they analyze this kind of the fact of psychological inertia and use some tests for psychological inertia, but they don't have the specific tools how to overcome this psychological inertia. Or some tools like Rorschach tests or something else, not very effective. And there are books authored by three specialists, the books on creative imagination development. Unfortunately, the vast majority of these books are in Russian and published in Russian language. There are no books on creative imagination development in English yet. I'm usually joking then, when I will be, when I retire, it will be my first book in English, creative imagination development and overcoming psychological inertia. I have plans for at least 4 or 5 books, but now I'm still working.
A question from Angmi Cho. Appreciate your explanation of these. What is the use of level of invention? How to quantify or measure it?
Okay. This question has nothing in common with creative imagination development. It's a typical question for trees. And my personal opinion, I don't use it, these levels of invention. They are not instrumental. But it's kind of useful for novices just to understand that invention could be incremental and invention could be disruptive. But how to measure it, guys, for me, it doesn't make sense to measure it quantitative.
Okay.
It's well enough to have qualitative. You understand the difference between incremental innovation and breakthrough or disruptive innovation.
Andreas Lovich, it's not a question but comment. I would like to see online courses in CAD training.
Okay.
Okay. You know how
you can send your request to Matrice Official, and Matrice Official, the quarterback, will ask some providers to perform a public course if necessary. But in order to have a course, we have to have at least 20 people in the group.
Well, I also advise you to check on the internet, and I'm sure you will find CAD online training in English language. Okay. More questions? Oh, okay, the last question. From Pusfendria Singh. Thank you for this learning opportunity. Please, could you point us to original 40 principles in Russian to overcome the various predispositions described? At Bosch Harold Ott have made pictograms for free. Well, for this.
Okay. Actually, it's a good question because some of these principles really help in overcoming psychological inertia and developing creative imagination. For instance, the principles do it in opposites. This thinking in inverting the system or inverting the process. It's a very good tool. Unfortunately, the 40 principles of resolving contradictions, they are very general. They don't have step-by-step algorithms inside. That's the problem, and there are developments in trees, kind of mini algorithms for each inventive principle. In this case, if you are using these mini algorithms, you can use some of these principles to fight with some types of psychological inertia. But there are some principles that are very kind of technically oriented, like use pneumatic or hydraulic. It's not about how to fight with psychological inertia.
Okay, Simon, thank you very much. The time for our webinar is over, and I'm sure all our guests really appreciate your sharing your experience, your ideas with us.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention. And if you still have some questions, you can send it to organizers of Matrice Official webinars. And I will be more than happy to address these questions. And the next Matrice Official webinar, Valery, when it's scheduled?
It's not scheduled yet, but it will be in just a few days. I will share the information to everyone who subscribed to Matriz official news.
Okay, Valery, thank you very much for moderating
Welcome.
this webinar. And again, thank you, everybody. Be creative. Think creatively.
And imaginative.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.